Okay, be honest. Do you actually know what this does? No, you don't. You put it in the pot because your grandma did, and she put it in because her grandma did. It's like peer pressure from dead people. You buy a jar of these things, you drop one stiff grey leaf into a massive pot of soup, and you tell yourself it adds flavour. Does it? Or are we all just making hot leaf juice for no reason? It feels like a scam. It looks like hedge clippings that fell in by accident. But what if I told you this is all wrong? What if I told you that this dry little leaf is actually a chemical powerhouse, and that without it, your dinner is doomed? Today, we're going to look at a vital ingredient you're forced to use but forbidden to eat. You'd be forgiven for thinking the bay leaf is soup trash. You fish it out of the sauce and throw it away. But back in the day, this leaf was the ultimate status symbol. In ancient Rome, you didn't put this in your stew, you put it on your head. It was a symbol of victory. Emperors didn't wear gold crowns at first, they wore bay leaves. Julius Caesar wore a crown made of these leaves all the time. Now, history books say he did this to show his power, but the real reason? He was going bald. Caesar was losing his hair, and he hated it. So he used the wreath to hide his shiny spot. He was doing a comb-over with a bush. But he also wore it because he was terrified of lightning. The Romans believed that a bay tree was immune to lightning strikes, so they decided that wearing the leaves made you immune too. Emperor Tiberius, the most powerful man in the world, was absolutely petrified of thunderstorms. When he heard thunder, he didn't call his guards, he grabbed his bay leaf crown and hid. So picture this, the ruler of the known world, a man who commanded legions, sitting in the dark wearing a shrub on his head, hoping Jupiter wouldn't zap him. Like a Roman tinfoil hat. Pliny the Elder, the famous Roman author, warned people never to burn these leaves, not because they smelled bad, but because they crackled. He believed that the loud crack of a burning bay leaf was the trees screaming in agony. So to recap, it fixes baldness, it stops lightning, and it screams if you set fire to it. Wearing a screaming shrub to avoid a lightning strike might sound bonkers, but it's the pinnacle of rationality compared to the Greek tradition, because the Greeks not only linked it to the worst first date in ancient history, but also started chewing it to hallucinate. It all started with the sun god, Apollo. Apollo was having a very bad day. He tried to chat up a nymph called Daphne. She really wasn't interested. In fact, she was so uninterested that she begged her father, a river god, to save her from the date. Just as any loving father would do, he turned her into a tree, specifically a bay tree. Apollo caught up to her, found a tree instead of a girl, and decided to make it his official symbol. Yes, he got friend-zoned and decided to wear the girl who rejected him as a hat. But the Greeks didn't just wear it, they chewed it, and not for the flavour. The Oracle of Delphi was the most famous fortune teller in the ancient world. Kings and generals would travel for miles to ask her the future. She'd sit on a stool, breathe in strange vapours, and give them riddles. History tells us she had a secret weapon. She was chewing on bay leaves, great big mouthfuls of them. The priestesses believed that chomping on Apollo's sacred leaf gave them visions. So, the most powerful political advice in history, the advice that started wars and ended empires, might have just been the ramblings of a woman who was high on soup ingredients. She was munching on a hedge and seeing the future. So for thousands of years, this plant was thought of as magical. It protected you from the gods, it told you the future, it was sacred. So how on earth did it end up being the boring dry leaf that you ignore in your kitchen cupboard? Well, first, it had to travel the world. Now, if you live in the West, you probably think the bay leaf is just a dull French thing. It lives in a jar next to the mixed herbs at the back of a cupboard. But cross a few borders, and forgetting to use this leaf is practically a criminal offence. In the Philippines, it's the star ingredient of the national dish, adobo, If you try to cook adobo without a bay leaf, a Filipino grandmother will appear out of nowhere and throw plates at you. It adds a bitter, savoury punch that vinegar alone can't give. In India, they use a cousin of the bay leaf called tej pata. It looks the same, but tastes a bit like cinnamon. It's the secret weapon in a biryani. And the weirdest use of all comes from the Caribbean. In the West Indies, they looked at this tree and thought, you know what? I don't want to eat that. I want to smell like it. They invented bay rum. Sounds like a drink, but no, it was a cologne. They distilled the leaves into a spicy alcoholic perfume which was huge in the 1800s. Men all over the world were slapping bay leaf juice on their faces in the hope of attracting women. Historians have failed to record whether it was indeed a 19th century chick magnet or just nice-smelling mosquito repellent. And here's where it gets tragic. Because bay rum was made with alcohol, some people got confused. During Prohibition in the US, people would actually drink the cologne. They were drinking Aftershave to get a buzz. So people have done everything to this plant. We've worn it on our heads, rubbed it on our faces, hallucinated on it. And we've put it in our stew. But there's one single thing that you must never ever do with it. You must never swallow it whole, because if you do, the leaf fights back. Have you ever noticed that the bay leaf is basically immortal? If you boil spinach for 3 minutes, it turns into green slime. You can cook an onion until it practically vanishes, but you can boil a bay leaf for 6 hours and it looks exactly the same. It comes out of the pot just as stiff and sharp as it went in. Why? Because the bay leaf isn't really food. It's made of incredibly tough cellulose fibers. To a human stomach, it's as tough and indigestible as a credit card. And that can be a big problem. If you accidentally swallow a piece of basil, nothing happens. If you swallow a whole bay leaf, it stays sharp, travelling through your system like a tiny organic knife. In 1983, a famous medical journal published a report called Complications from Bay Leaf Ingestion. This botanical shrapnel can be serious. Doctors have found bay leaves puncturing intestines. One man had a bay leaf stuck in his throat for days. He didn't know it was there, but he felt like he'd swallowed a razor blade. The bay leaf is like a culinary ninja throwing star disguised as a herb. So this begs the question, if it tastes like nothing and tries to stab us from the inside, why do we bother? Are we all victims of a massive prank? Or is there something hidden inside this leaf that we're missing? To find out, we need to look at the chemistry of fat. There's a massive debate in the cooking world. Does this leaf actually have a taste? Well, when it's dry, it doesn't have much of a taste at all. You'd get more flavour from, I don't know, licking a brick. If you crumble it up, it smells a bit like an old medicine cabinet. But that's the secret. You aren't supposed to eat it, you're supposed to let it have a bath. If you boil bay leaves in plain water, nothing much happens. At most, it would taste very slightly minty. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think the leaf is useless, but it's not. It's just picky. You see, the chemicals inside this leaf are hydrophobic. In other words, they hate water. The flavour compounds, with fancy names like eucalyptol and terpenes, won't dissolve in water. They're locked inside the tough cellulose prison of the leaf. But what they do love is fat. Oil, butter, animal fat. On a molecular level, the flavour of a bay leaf is a magnet for grease. So when you throw it into a rich, fatty beef stew, the magic finally happens. The hot fat unlocks the leaf by pulling out the chemical key eucalyptol. That's the same stuff you find in cough drops. It opens up your nose. Now, why would you want cough drop flavour in your dinner? Because the bay leaf adds a subtle layer of minty freshness that cuts through the grease in a dense meat stew. It makes the dish taste much more interesting. Think of it like a rock band. The meat's the lead singer. It gets all the attention. The onions are the drummer. They make a lot of noise. The bay leaf is the bass player. You don't really notice the bass player. He stands at the back looking bored. But if the bass player stopped playing, the song would sound empty. You wouldn't know why it sounded bad, you'd just know it felt wrong. That's the bay leaf. It's the bass player of your pot roast. It's doing a lot of heavy lifting in the background while the brisket gets all the glory. So let's go back to the question. Is the bay leaf a scam? Is it garden waste that we throw in the pot in an act of meaningless ritual? No, it's a brilliant chemical engineer disguised as a dried leaf. It makes heavy food feel light and a simple dish feel complex. But let's not get overly sentimental. When you're eating your dinner and you accidentally bite into that organic little razor blade, you aren't thinking about the Oracle of Delphi. You're thinking, surely there are better times to be munching on a bush than when I'm in the middle of a pot roast. And that's the curious paradox of the bay leaf. It's the only ingredient that we invite into our kitchens, completely fail to taste, and then cautiously fish out of the stew as if it's an unexploded bomb. But bless the humble bay leaf for giving its all to save the casserole. Next time you pull one out of your sauce, just leave it respectfully on the side of your plate. Once upon a time, it covered Julius Caesar's bald spot and crowned the sun god. And now, you're putting it in your soup.